While Britain's efforts in the world of commercial aviation gradually subsided, from technological pioneer of the 1950s to complete collapse by the 1990s, there was one aircraft that kept the UK's civil airliner prospects alive into the new millennium and proved to be the longest single production run for a corporate jet in history. That aircraft was the de Havilland DH.125 Jet Dragon, a corporate model built from 1963 to 2013, and one that not only saw an extremely long production run, but was also a huge success across the globe, especially in the United States, with 60% of total examples constructed being delivered to the American market. The DH.125 can trace its origins back to 1961, a period of great turmoil for its parent de Havilland Company, as while the firm had seen major commercial success with the de Havilland DH.104 Dove of 1945, it had also suffered costly losses due to the Comet jet disasters of the 1950s. However, while the Comet foundered and was overtaken by the likes of the Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8, the Dove would go on to become the best-selling British commercial airliner to that point, with 544 units delivered during its 21-year production run to both small and large airlines across the globe. Sadly, the Dove's success could not prevent the financial collapse of de Havilland in the late 1950s due to a variety of factors, including the financial ramifications of the Comet disasters and that airliner's inability to sell in sufficient numbers after the launch of the 707, a loss of military contracts as a result of the recommendations made by the 1957 Defence White Paper, and an encouragement by the British state for UK aircraft manufacturers to merge their assets so as to rationalise the number of builders in the marketplace. Thus, in 1960, de Havilland aircraft was purchased by the Hawker Siddeley Group, but maintained the de Havilland mark, the company's main headquarters being at Hatfield Aerodrome north of London, from where it would continue to develop various preceding model proposals, including the DH.121 Trident medium-range jet airliner. In 1961, de Havilland took note of a rising trend for corporate airliners, as with the expansion of multinational businesses during the post-war era, dedicated executive transports were now becoming a highly sought-after means for magnates of commerce to travel across the world rather than being kept to the strict timetables of commercial flights. Throughout the 1950s, business aircraft generally comprised special order variants of regular commercial airliner models, outfitted with low-capacity but extremely lavish interiors, while attempts at creating dedicated executive transport aircraft generally failed to reach fruition, as was the case with the Cessna 620 and the McDonnell 119. However, come the late 1950s, the demands on business executives to travel with the highest speed and efficiency were becoming increasingly extreme, and with the rise of commercial jet aviation by way of the Comet, the 707 and the DC-8, it was only a matter of time before this new technology had migrated into the realm of corporate transports, and by 1960 there were multiple business jet proposals now undergoing early design and testing. The first was the Lockheed Jetstar, which took its maiden flight in September 1957 as the world's pioneering dedicated business jet, the model entering sales in 1961 and would see 202 examples built by the time production ended in 1980, while a year later, North American Aviation unveiled the Sabreliner, which presented dimensions that were much more akin to how executive transports would look going into the future, and saw over 800 units constructed by the time production ended in 1982. For de Havilland, the Dove had been the company's main executive transport throughout the 1950s, but with the launch of the Jetstar and the Sabreliner, the company soon turned its attention to a possible jet replacement for the aircraft that could be aimed at the highly lucrative corporate market. In order to develop the new model, designated the DH.125 Jet Dragon, market research conducted via various customer clinics determined that several design minimums had to be met in order to make the upcoming aircraft a viable light transport and business jet, the result being a model that provided a perfect mixture of range, speed, and fuel efficiency that meant even smaller corporations could run their own fleet of private jets economically. As such, the minimum range of the model was set to 1,000 miles, while the fundamental platform of the Jet Dragon would integrate reliability and conventionality so as to make it an easy machine to maintain for those companies working on a budget, the eventual design being a twin rear-mounted engine model that would be equipped with Bristol Siddeley Viper turbojet power plants, while a slightly swept wing and larger slotted flaps made the aircraft easily capable of operating out of small fields. On August 13, 1962, the first of two prototypes, Golf Alpha Romeo Yankee Alpha, conducted its maiden flight from Hatfield, followed by the second aircraft on December 12 of the same year, the second prototype being more aerodynamically representative of the final production model and was fitted with more equipment than the initial prototype. Following continued testing, the layout for the production model saw various changes implemented, including a longer fuselage and a greater wingspan, with the first production standard aircraft performing its maiden flight on February 12, 1963, though by this point, the de Havilland name had been discontinued by its parent firm, and the aircraft building arm of Hawker Siddeley would be dubbed Hawker Siddeley Aviation. As such, with production floor space at Hatfield being taken up by the Hawker Siddeley Trident jet airliner, assembly for what was now dubbed the HS.125 was transferred to the former Vickers Armstrong factory at Havilland near Chester, and on September 10, 1964, the first Hawker Siddeley HS.125 was delivered to a corporate customer, though the brand DH.125 would be maintained for sales on the American market until 1993. The initial variant of the HS.125 was the Series 1, which included the two prototypes, but following complaints as to a lack of power and the fact that the rear cabin windows were too close to the engines, leading to complaints of excessive interior noise, Hawker Siddeley revised the design after only 10 units to include upgraded Bristol Siddeley Viper 521 engines and reduced the number of windows from 6 to 5 in order to mitigate the cabin noise issue, the new version being dubbed the Series 1A. Despite this early setback, the HS.125 proved to be an immediate hit among the corporations of the world, as only one of 3 business jets on sale during the early to mid-1960s, its performance easily outstripping the likes of the turboprop-powered Gulfstream 1, while at the same time providing speed and capacity that was easily competitive with the Jetstar and Sabreliner. Surprisingly, the biggest buyer of the HS.125 were customers in the United States, as despite this market being extremely insular, and with multiple domestic models also on sale, including the Jetstar, Sabreliner, and the upcoming Learjet 23, the model was able to win over potential buyers through its incredible mixture of performance and practical luxury, a machine perfect for both longer distance flights and frequent short hops between various small fields. Such was the success of the HS.125 in America that by 1990, of the 650 aircraft having been produced by that point, 400 of them were being flown in the United States, accounting for over 60% of the model's overall sales, the sheer demand for the Jet Dragon being so great that for a majority of the aircraft's production run, 1 unit was being sold every 7 working days. Outside of civilian applications, the HS.125 was also a popular machine among the ranks of the Royal Air Force, who purchased 20 examples under the designation of the Hawker Siddeley Domini T1 for use as a navigational trainer, these machines entering service with the RAF in 1965 and were assigned to No. 55 Squadron. VIP and private transport versions were also delivered as the HS.125 CC-1 in 1971 to No. 32 Squadron at RAF Northolt in order to replace aging Hawker Siddeley Andover transport aircraft, and were assigned for the use of the royal family, including the Queen's Flight, No. 32 Squadron being renamed in 1995 to the Royal Squadron. Other military operators of the HS.125 included Argentina, Ireland, Malawi, Malaysia, Nicaragua, South Africa, and Uruguay, while current operators of the 125 with governments and armed forces include Botswana, Brazil, Japan, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and Turkmenistan. In terms of design, the HS.125 presented a platform that was easily adaptable to the changing shape of the business jet market, with size and range being increased over the decades to turn what was originally a somewhat short-range machine into an intercontinental executive transport used to fly heads of state and corporate magnates all over the world. In 1977, Hawker Siddeley Aircraft, which was in a strong position on the British aviation market thanks to the HS.125 and the HS.748 turboprop airliner, was merged by the government with the ailing British Aircraft Corporation, or BAC, to create British Aerospace, with the Jet Dragon subsequently being redesignated the BAE 125. By the mid-1980s, the corporate aircraft market was essentially split into 3 categories, including holding companies that would charter out fleets of private jets to customers on a rental basis, aircraft owned by private individuals such as celebrities and certain business magnates, and examples purchased by large corporations such as shopping chains, banks, and shipping companies, among others. While sales for business jets across the board had been fairly consistent throughout the 1970s, with the sudden revival of the global economy in the 1980s, as nations, particularly in the West, turned away from the manufacturing sector of industry and moved into finances and the stock market, demand for executive transports jumped exponentially. With the end of production for the similarly sized Jetstar and Sabreliner in the early 1980s, the BAE-125 proved to be the only mid-size business jet on the market during this period, bridging the gap neatly between smaller jets, such as the Cessna Citation II, and large jets like the Dassault Falcon 900, with no viable competitor to this segment of the market, emerging until the Learjet 60 of January 1993. However, in 1992, as the world became gripped in a global economic recession caused by the First Gulf War, demand for business jets rapidly waned, together with sales for commercial airliners across the board, while those firms still procuring aircraft were now placing fuel efficiency as the highest priority. For British Aerospace, the results of the 1992 recession were devastating, as at the time the company's commercial performance was dictated by two highly profitable models supporting an unstable product range that included the BAE-125 business jet, the BAE Jetstream feeder turboprop, the BAE-146 regional jet, and the BAE ATP regional turboprop. While the BAE-125 and BAE Jetstream models were selling extremely well on the marketplace, the BAE ATP was a complete commercial failure due to it attempting to replicate the success of the preceding HS.125 while not accounting for the rise of viable competitors such as the ATR-42 and the de Havilland DH.125, the HS.125 having entered the marketplace in 1960 in a generally unique position, while the market of the late 1980s was now saturated with much younger opponents. The BAE-146, meanwhile, was an incredibly successful machine on the regional market for jet transports working into small fields, but the potential profits for this airliner were heavily subdued due to a marketing decision made by British Aerospace, in which the company would lease units to start-up carriers with little capital, far below the aircraft's market value, meaning that, for the number of 146s being produced, BAE was only making a fraction of what it could have been in terms of revenue. This led to British Aerospace coming to the brink of bankruptcy during the summer of 1992, and thus, in order to save itself from fiscal collapse, the company sold its business jets division during 1993 to the Raytheon Company, an American defense contractor and industrial corporation based in Waltham, Massachusetts. At the time, the BAE-125 comprised two primary variants, the smaller 125-800 and the larger 125-1000, the 125-1000 having conducted its maiden flight on June 16, 1990, and incorporated various changes to make the aircraft a true intercontinental business jet, including the adoption of the newly developed Pratt & Whitney Canada PW300 engines and new digital avionics. The BAE-125 name was maintained until mid-September 1994, when following the merging of the Beech Aircraft Corporation and Raytheon Corporate Jets into Raytheon Aircraft, the newly procured line of the 125 saw a revival of the Hawker Siddeley name after 17 years of dormancy, with what was formerly the BAE-125 being redesignated as the Hawker 800 and the Hawker 1000 respectively. With the Raytheon purchase, production of the Hawker jets was transferred to Wichita, Kansas from 1996, although the Havilland factory, which was now owned by Airbus UK, continued to produce the fuselage, wings and tail fin under contract, with final assembly being conducted in the United States. The Hawker business jets would remain competitive throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, holding its own against the still ever-expanding market for corporate jets as production increased towards the new millennium, the model passing 1,000 units built in April 1998 and was heading rapidly towards 2,000 units by the turn of 2010. However, in 2008, the Great Recession saw a catastrophic drop in business jet demand, with the Hawker Beechcraft Corporation, or HBC, suffering heavily from the downturn due primarily to its sale by Raytheon to a consortium of Goldman Sachs and the Onyx Corporation in 2006, the outcomes of the deal leaving the company with a heavy burden of debt that it struggled to support in the face of the 2008 economic crisis. With the Hawker jets having lost their main customer base, and with what little demand was left being strangled by an incredibly diverse and widespread selection of competing models that were often cheaper to buy, HBC's profits completely collapsed, and in April 2012, the firm defaulted on interest payments and was found to be in breach of banking covenants, causing widespread speculation that it would enter bankruptcy. On May 3rd of that year, HBC entered bankruptcy filing voluntary petitions under Chapter 11 in American bankruptcy court, resulting in the firm accepting an offer to be purchased by Superior Aviation Beijing, though 6 months later, it was revealed that following protracted negotiations, the buyout deal had failed and the company would instead cease jet production. Therefore, from February 19, 2013, HBC emerged from bankruptcy as the Beechcraft Corporation, and with the retirement of the Hawker name, its series of business jets also came to an end after 50 years of production and 1,720 units built. Beechcraft, in order to help finance its recovery, selling off the former production facilities for the 125 jet family, although they still retain the type certificate and support responsibility for all 125s built. Elsewhere, while the 125 and its later Hawker jets remain in widespread use across the globe, the military Dominie, after 45 years of service, was retired by the RAF in 2011 due to diminishing requirements and cutbacks by the government to the British Armed Forces, while No. 32 Squadron would maintain operation of the 125 as part of the Royal Flight until 2015, when the last units were retired early against an original withdrawal date of 2022. In terms of accidents, the BAE 125 family has been involved in 11 incidents that have resulted in the cumulative deaths of 68 people. The first fatal accident involving the 125 took place on December 28, 1970, when DH.125 November 36 Mike Kilo crashed into the side of a mountain 7 miles from Boise Airport due to an improper instrument approach to runway 10 left and a misreading of the altimeter, resulting in the deaths of 2 crew. The worst accident involving the aircraft took place on May 26, 1971, when 3 DH.125s flying in formation crashed into Devil's Peak on the flank of Table Mountain near Cape Town, South Africa, due to poor visibility while practicing for a flypast for the 10th anniversary of the Republic, leading to the deaths of 11 people. On March 16, 1991, Hawker Siddeley HS.125 1A, November 831 Lima Charlie, carrying band members for country singer Reba McEntire, crashed into the side of Otay Mountain shortly after departing from San Diego due to poor visibility, killing all 8 band members and the 2 pilots. On September 5, 2015, HS.125 Air Ambulance 6 Victor Alpha India Mike, flying from Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso to Dakar in Senegal, suffered a mid-air collision with a Ceiba Intercontinental Boeing 737-800 while flying over southeastern Senegal, the winglet of the 737 slicing through the fuselage of the HS.125, causing a cabin depressurization that incapacitated all on board, though the business jet continued to fly uncommanded for another hour before running out of fuel and crashing into the Atlantic Ocean 70 miles west of Dakar, killing all 7 on board, while the Boeing 737 was able to land safely with minor damage. The latest incident involving the 125 family took place on April 6, 2016, when Raytheon U-125 493043 of the Japan Air Self-Defense Force crashed into Mount Takakuma during low visibility, killing all 6 aboard, the flight data recorder having noted that the pilot in command, having heard the ground proximity warning sound in the cockpit 12 seconds before the crash, ignored the alarm and manually switched it off 2 seconds before impact with the mountain. The 125 has also been involved in some more unusual incidents, and a case of exceptional survival against overwhelming damage, being the only business jet model in history to have ever been hijacked mid-flight. On June 30, 1967, Air Hansen HS.125, Golf Alpha Sierra November uniform, carrying former Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mose Siombe, from Ibiza to Palma de Mallorca, was hijacked at gunpoint by Francis Bourdin, an agent of the French SDECE, and forcibly flown to Algeria, where Siombe would be placed under house arrest for the next 2 years until his death in 1969. On August 7, 1988, BAE 125 Oscar Kilo 1, as owned by the Botswana government and carrying Botswanan President Ket Mazeri and his staff to a meeting in Luanda, came under fire from an Angolan MiG-23 as part of the Angolan Bush War of 1966 to 1990, being attacked by 2 R-60 air-to-air missiles. While one missile sheared off the No. 2 engine from the business jet, damaged the fuselage and led to cabin depressurization, the second lightweight infrared homing missile followed the falling power plant and destroyed it, while the 125, under the command of British aerospace demonstrator pilot Arthur Ricketts, was successfully able to make an emergency landing on a bush strip at Kuto BA with no serious injuries among those aboard, making it the only recorded business aircraft to survive being hit by an air-to-air missile. Today, the BAE-125 represents not only the longest produced British civil jet in history, but also the most successful mainstream commercial aircraft to be built in the UK, succeeding where larger and more prestigious airliners had failed, such as the Vickers VC-10, the de Havilland Comet, and even Concorde, by having over 1,700 examples sold, a majority of which were delivered to customers in the United States. In the end, the BAE-125 and its kin continued to maintain the adage of simple but sturdy engineering having the greatest appeal, as the likes of the VC-10 and the Trident, though much more notable in terms of design, proved far too complicated to see themselves gain widespread endearment to potential customers, while machines like the Viscount, the Dove, the Jetstream, and the 125 prided themselves on their flexible underpinnings and lack of technical complexity, creating models that stood the test of time and found global sales success.